In this tutorial, you will learn how to create a box with a sliding dovetail lid as a beginner, pro, and master 3D modeler. Stay tuned to the very end for a very helpful tip. That's all I can say about that, so let's do it. Let's start off with modeling our box and sliding dovetail lid for beginners. So first, let's save our file and call it box with sliding dovetail lid. Next, let's create our components. We will create a box and a lid. Now we can activate our box so that all design elements will be located in the timeline for your box. We just hover over box there and select activate component. Now let's create a sketch on our XY plane. We'll create a center rectangle with the center being at our origin. For beginners, we usually think of only one product that we'd like to design at a time. So let's create our box, which will be 150 millimeters deep. We can just press tab to go to the next dimension, and it will be 75 millimeters wide. Enter. Now that our sketch is done, we can simply just finish our sketch. Next, let's extrude it to 50 millimeters in height. You can do that just by going to extrude. It will select our profile by default, and we can simply just tell our distance to be minus 50 millimeters. Once we have a solid body, we can now shell it. So let's click on shell and select our top face. And let's say that our wall thickness will be 4 millimeters. At this point, we can create a new sketch which will define the shape for our dovetail. Let's do that by selecting sketch and then selecting the front face of our box. Remember that 3D printers can't print any defined overhang. Most follow what's called a 45-degree rule, which means that the angle of our dovetail shouldn't be any less than 45 degrees. So why don't we actually make it 60 degrees to avoid all potential problems with printing overhangs? So in our sketch, let's first project the inside faces of our box, which will create projected lines that we can work with. We can do that by moving our view cube, pressing P for project, and then just selecting our inside faces. There you can see that there are purple lines now that are projected to our sketch that we're currently working on, which is the front face of our box. Let's press OK now. Next, we'll specify the height of our lid. So let's just create another line. We can create a line from edge to edge there. And we'll press D for dimension and specify our lid height to be, well, let's just call it 3 millimeters. Now we can create the dovetail, which will go right here with a small relief on the top. So let's create this, selecting our line. And now let's just specify an angle, and let's call it 60 degrees there. And you can see it's not connecting to anything. So we can just make sure it lines up with our projected line there. And all black dots mean that they're fully constrained, whereas if they are white, it means that they're not yet constrained. So our line, though, is not constrained, so we have to specify a distance either in our X or in our Y. So let's just specify it in our Y direction. We'll select the top and that, and let's just call this 0.5 millimeters for our relief. At this point, we can just mirror it to the other side. So select mirror, our dovetail angle, our mirror line. Now to select this mirror line, there's nothing here that we can actually select on our box. So we have to expand box, go to origin, and now we can select that plane, which will mirror our dovetail to the other side. Let's go OK. Our sketch is now done. So let's finish it. And now we can extrude this to the opposite side of our box, the inside face there. And we'll select extrude. We'll select 1, 2, and 3. And now for our extent type, let's go to object and select that inside face. And you can see it will extrude that sketch profile all the way to the other side of our part. And we'll go OK. And now we can hide our origin. And would you look at that? Our box is complete. Now we can move on to our lid. Let's activate it first. Just hover over and select the little bullseye beside there to activate it. Now let's create a sketch and select the front face of our box. As explained in many of our previous tutorials, this is called in-context design, which means it will inherit all of the body elements that lie on the face that we just selected, which includes all of the dovetail geometry. Now, the only thing we have to do is extend our dovetail line so that it's in line with the top edge of our box. So let's do that. We'll just select a line here. We'll pick that as our endpoint. And now we can just extend it into space. And as explained just a moment ago, if we see a white dot, that means it's not constrained. So we can move that up and down, but our black is. Let's go to the other side as well. We'll do the exact same thing. And if it's not parallel, we want to make sure that the little symbol shows up in the middle where we have parallel lines there. But if it's not parallel, don't worry. Let's just put it off on a different angle. And now we can select parallel and select both those lines, and it will make them parallel with each other. Great. Now, just to be sure, let's create a line that connects both of these. We'll make this horizontal. And then we want to make sure that this line is perfectly in line with the top of our box. So let's just pick coincident, select that, and the bullseye. And now everything is black. And we should be able to select this profile in its entirety, which will turn up in blue. Let's finish our sketch now. And we can extrude it to this face over here. So let's go extrude, select that profile, and go to object. And there we have it. We've got our lid finished. So now we can activate our box and see our box is no longer transparent, but our lid is. When we activate our lid becomes solid and our body becomes, or our box becomes transparent. So at this point, you'll notice that the lid and the box are a perfect fit. Now, this is not a good idea as A, nothing can be manufactured or 3D printed perfectly. And B, even if it was made perfectly, it would definitely bind together and make it impossible to open or close the lid. So we need to make what is called a relief for our box and lid so that it can slide properly. We can do this by selecting the Press Pull Face tool and selecting both angled faces of our lid. Let's do that. Let's just hide our box first of all. We can select Press Pull and now select both of those faces and we can move them in towards the inside of our lid. Of course, we don't want to go that drastic. We want to add a slight relief. So let's call this 0.5 millimeters. As I press enter, activate our box once again, you can see that there is actually quite a bit of a relief there. That's probably too much. Let's go back to our press pull tool. And here we can just put something a little bit more reasonable. Let's call it 0.1 millimeters. And there we go. That looks a lot better. Now, depending on how accurate our 3D printer is calibrated, we may need to adjust this amount further if we note that after being printed, the lid is binding or too sloppy with its fit. Now let's go OK there. Now at the same time, we should probably put a small relief over here to prevent binding as well. So let's just hide our box and we'll create a fillet on this edge and that edge, and we'll call this 0.1 millimeters as well. Now the last thing that we need to do is join our box and lid together. So let's activate our main assembly actually. And as you can see, we can actually grab our lid and it can move off into space, and our box off to the side there, they can move in space. Don't worry, if this ever happens, just go up to the top right here, revert position, and it will bring them back to their original locations. Now to prevent the box body from moving, let's just right click it in our browser and select ground. This will prevent it from moving. I'm clicking and I cannot move it, but we can still move our lid. So next we're going to select joint. And as we do so, you notice that our main box body becomes transparent. And why is that? Well, as explained in many of our previous tutorials, the pattern for joining components, or the law for joining components in Fusion 360 is this to that. So we want to move one thing to snap to another thing. Whichever we pick first is the item that will move. Our box is grounded, which means that it can't be the first item selected for our joints, since it cannot move. So let's go to our lid here and select a snap point. I'll select the bottom face first. and the front snap point or the mid snap point. And I'll do the same thing on our box. I'll snap to that face and to the front. Great. And now you can see that my motion actually was on slider. Yours should show rigid. So if that's the case, that's okay. Just go to the motion tab and go to our type, and we're going to select slider. So right now the motion is in the Z axis. So let's change that to our Y axis. If you're unsure which axis to select, that's okay. You can always just pick one at a time and see which directions they move. In this case, Y is the motion that we like. Now we can also adjust our joint motion limits. We're going to have a minimum and maximum. Our minimum here, we can just select at 0. Our maximum, if we select that as well, we can now move our arrows here to see which direction we want it to move to. So we want our maximum to be at, well, this is going to be the length, the specified dimension for the depth of our box. So let's call this 150. And our minimum has changed, so we'll go back to 0. And we also want our rest to be on there to be at 0 so that anytime we reset it, it will go back to this current position that you see on the screen. So now let's preview limits. And there we go. We've got a fully functioning joint with a slider motion. So let's go OK. And you can see because as we selected 0 for our rest position, it has gone back to that position, which is how we want our lid and our body to be displayed on our canvas. Okay, so we just finished our box with sliding dovetail lid for beginners. Now let's move on to how a pro would do this. Someone with more experience won't just assume that what he first designs will be perfect, but will be thinking about any potential adjustments that they will need to make with all design elements of this project. So we don't actually have to do anything to our model. It looks great right now. However, we do need to create a parameter for each element. Now don't skip or go to a new video. If you have never learned parameters or have refused to do so for one reason or another, please follow the next couple minutes to see how easy and beneficial parameters can be to your workflow. So let's open up our parameters and create a new parameter for each feature of our box that may need to be changed at some point in the future. So let's create our first parameter together, which is our depth. We can do that by selecting the little add user parameter here. And now we're going to type in depth. Remember that we can't have spacing in our parameter name, but casing does matter. So I always separate words with either an uppercase letter or an underscore. So for example, depth for part, or you can put underscores there, depth for part, whatever you prefer. So just remember to include upper or lower cases or underscores in your parameter names. Now we can specify a unit, which in this case it's metric, and our expression, we're going to say this is 150 millimeters, so nothing is changing in our box. And we can go enter. There you can see our user parameter. It has our name, depth, our unit, our expression, and our value. So our expression can actually be an equation, which will show the corresponding value or the equated value over here. Now let's do this for all the other design elements in our project. I'll do that super quickly right now. So just to repeat, here for wall thickness, we haven't separated our words. We cannot. If we try to, it will bring it up in red. So we need to either separate them with a capital letter or an underscore, whatever you would prefer. Now let's go OK. Now all we need to do is just apply those parameters to each design element in our timeline. Let's start off with our first sketch. And actually our first sketch has nothing in it, so I accidentally created that. I'll just select it and press delete. So now let's pick our first sketch in our timeline. There we have it. So let's apply the parameters now. So instead of a static number of 150, we're going to type in depth. So just, you don't have to spell the whole word here. You can just start spelling any letter contained in that word. For example, I can even type in H if I want, and depth shows up there. But let's just spell D-E, and then make sure to press enter once to bring it up into your window, and then enter again to lock it into place. Let's do the same thing for our width. Perfect. Let's finish our sketch. Now let's do the same thing with our extrude. This is the height of our box. So instead of minus 50 millimeters, we're going to go minus and specify height. Enter. There we go. Next, our wall thickness. Let's click on that. And our wall thickness, instead of 4 millimeters specifically, we're going to type in our wall thickness parameter. Enter, enter again. And as you can see, nothing is changing on our canvas right now. And that's because we're telling all of our parameters to be the exact same values as what we originally defined for our models. Now we also need our lid height, which is found in, I believe it's this sketch right here. Yes, there it is, our lid height. And enter. And now our relief, which is in our press pull command. So instead of minus 0.1, we can specify minus relief. And there we have it. So now that we've added all of our parameters into the model, we can just simply bring our box over here to the side, bring up our parameter window. And I always encourage my students to do this. Sometimes they have their model hidden behind the window here, which doesn't help you see the changes. But if you bring your model off to the side, remember you can do that by hitting the middle mouse button, and then you can pan your model. So just bring it off to the side, and then you can see any changes made in real time. So let's change our depth here to 200 millimeters and see what happens. Oh, there we go. Let's change our width to 120 mils. There we go. What about our height? Let's go to 60. Now let's go to our wall thickness. We can turn off our lid or hide it. Our wall thickness, let's go to 6 mils. And one other thing that is good for you to remember is just select the expression once, one click. And you don't have to erase anything. You don't have to do anything. It's already highlighted. So you can just type in something else there. So here we go. Let me show you. Instead of 6 mil, I'm going to go 8. One click and then 8. One click, 6. So let's change our lid height. Let's go to 4. So you can see every single design element in our project right now can be changed very easily. Our relief as well, we'll have to turn on our lid for that. Let's zoom on in here. And let's just change our relief to 0.5. Let's go to something a little bit too much. Yeah, let's go back down to 0.2. And again, once we've 3D printed this part, if we recognize that our lid has to be a little smaller or a little bigger, or whatever the case, we can just simply change it in our parameters. But let's go back to 0.1. So we've verified that all our parameters work. Let's just go OK. And now we are ready to go on to the master level of 3D modeling. So as you develop your skills, you will recognize that time is money. The faster and more reliable you can make something, the faster you can output it to your 3D printer or get it manufactured. So to help us do just that, Autodesk has just released an amazing tool called configurations. This is what we should all strive to use, because it shows that we have everything in our design controlled, which means we can change things very easily and efficiently. And it means that we've designed things correctly as well. So let's first click on Configure up here. And when we do, a window will show up here. While you're in configuration mode, click highlighted objects in the browser and features in the timeline to configure. Let's not show that again, because once you understand it, it's very easy to understand. So let's go OK. Now you can see that all items in your design that can be configured are highlighted in blue. So over here, you can see that our master assembly has blue, box is blue, lid is blue, and then everything in our timeline is blue. This doesn't mean that you will have always the exact same items that you will be able to configure. Sometimes things in your timeline won't be able to be configured, and that's okay. They just won't show up in blue. Now, if we look over here to the side, we can see that we have one configuration. This is our default. We can add configurations. So let's add 2 more configurations. We've got 3 total there, and go close. Now let's go to our configuration table, and we'll be able to right click and rename them whatever we'd like. Let's call this our large box, medium, and small, and press close. Now let's go back to our original configuration tool here to show all of the design elements that we can configure. And let's assume that we want to include something to configure in our first sketch. Well, we can just right-click it and go Configure. So anything we click on will add to our configurations table. We can click on Suppression, which means that it won't calculate anything related to that design tool. We can turn visibility on or off, which simply means it will be visible or hidden. And then it shows the D1 and D2 dimensions, which are the sketch elements that we use to create our box width and depth dimensions. Now we could simply just add D1 and D2, and once we do that, you can see it shows up in our configurations table. But since we've just created parameters, this makes our life a whole lot easier instead of having to guess what those are. Now, of course, it shows here our width and our depth because those are parameters that we've created as well. But let's just hide those and go OK. So instead of doing that within our timeline, let's just go up here to our configuration table and add parameters. This brings up our parameter window, and we can just simply click all of our parameters that we would like to be included in the configurations table. So I'm going to include all of them and go OK. Now you can see in our configurations that it includes a column for each of those parameters. Now I will simply add any dimensions that I'd like to each of those respective parameters. So for large, I kind of like a 200 mil depth. Our medium, let's go 175. Our small, let's go 150. And we'll do the same thing for the width and the height. Of course, if we're looking for a large, small, medium, these might all differ depending on what you want to design. But for width, I'll go to 150. Let's go 120 and 100. And then our height, let's go 80, 60, and 40. Now our wall thickness can change a little bit as well. Let's go 8, 7, and 6 just for fun. And our lid height, let's go 5, 4, and 3. And we'll keep the relief all the same right here as well. And let's go close. So now as the description to this video shows, we can change from one box design to the next in less than 1 second. Let's see if I can do that. Are you ready? All I have to do is click on the configuration we like. 3, 2, 1. Voila. There we have it. Let's do the same thing with the medium configuration. Again, going back to small, and everything changes in less than 1 second. So it's incredibly easy to add a new configuration in less than 1 second, change from one to the next. You've learned the beginner method, pro method, and master level method. But now, as mentioned at the beginning, we're going to talk about a little bit of a bonus tip for this tutorial. So let's say that you'd like a different appearance for each configuration, or you'd like a different decal for each of your configuration. Can we do that? Absolutely. Remember, as we select configure, each item that can be configured is shown in blue. You can see that our box and lid are highlighted in blue. So let's just go close. If we right click on the box, we can see that we can configure it. And here we can suppress it. We can change the physical material. We can configure the appearance or the visibility. So let's add appearance to our configuration. As we do so, you can see that it will add a new window underneath our configurations table where we can apply appearances. So this will actually, under theme 1, it will actually change our entire assembly or just our individual box. So let's go OK there and go back to our lid, configure, and we can add appearance to that as well. So we can actually adjust all 3 of them individually. Let's go close. Now to select our appearances, let's press A, and we can add all of our appearances into the design. So let me do that. Let's go to metal, and we can add blue aluminum. We can add, let's go red aluminum. Let's just have some fun here. We could even put some fabric in there too if we wanted. I'll have to download it first. Yellow fabric, let's do that. Red fabric. And let's go to plastic as well, because this will be printed on a 3D printer. So let's just go nylon 12. There we go. We have a host of different items in our design, including our original steel satin. So let's go close. Now if we go back to our configuration table, we can change these appearance themes. So let's add 2 more themes here. And our first theme will be our metal theme. We'll do blue box, and our lid will be red. Now for theme 2, we will say we want fabric generic and fabric yellow. And then the last, well, let's go back to our appearances here, and I'm actually going to add some wood appearances. Let's do that instead. We'll add mahogany and cherry. Let's do that just for fun. I have to download mahogany, cherry. There we go. Okay, let's add cherry. Perfect. Okay, so close, and now we can change those last ones, and I will specify mahogany and cherry. So now if I want the large one to follow the first theme, I can just select it over here, theme 1. Our medium, we can select theme 2, and our small, we can select theme 3. So let's go close, and again, 3, 2, 1. There we have it. And we'll go to our small. Perfect. So you can see that with configurations, you can adjust appearances very, very easily. Now, lastly, we can also do this for decals. Let's add a decal to our box. So I'm going to select our box. I'm going to activate it. I'm going to hide the lid, and we'll insert a decal. I'm going to insert it from my computer and select the original black logo. And now I can just select that face, and there is a decal that shows up. We can just position it, make it a little bit bigger. There we go. That looks pretty cool. So we'll go OK. Now in our timeline, again, anything that shows up in blue can be configured. So we can right click our decal, configure it, and then click on suppression. So over here, say we want our small box configuration to have the logo, but not the medium and not the large. So now when we select our medium or our large, the decal will disappear. Well, we hope that you've benefited from this tutorial. If you have, please consider liking, subscribing, and hitting that notification bell. If you love our channel, please consider supporting us by hitting the thanks button besides the like button or becoming a member. Check out our other tutorials so that you can continue to learn Fusion 360 with the Learn It channel.